In Sri Lanka today, fewer than 3 in 10 women are part of the labour force, compared to 2/3 of men. This gap is not just a statistic, it is a story of untapped potential, of households balancing survival, and of an economy missing half its strength. On Kaleidoscope Dialogues this week is Professor Dileni Gunewardena, Chair, Professor of Economics at the University of Peradeniya, Research Fellow with the Partnership for Economic Policy and author of a study on female labour force participation conducted for the ADB. What explains the steady decline that we have been seeing in labour force participation from 34.6% in 2014 to now 29.8% in 2024, which is just 2 years ago?
It has been declining. There's been fluctuations. In 2017, it was 36.6. But basically, you're right, it's been declining. But I think the even larger puzzle is why it's never in the last, since the 2000s, in the last 25 years, it's never reached higher than 36.6. Whereas in the 1990s, the low was 35%. So what's causing this? And I think there are three things. One is demographic shifts. So younger people are staying in school longer, especially girls. And then there's structural shifts. People are moving out of agriculture, and that's reducing, especially among older women, that's reducing female labour force participation. But the most important thing seems to be that there are income shifts in households where they can afford for the woman not to work, she's not working.
Do you think cultural expectations, also the lack of childcare infrastructure and elder care infrastructure, are these kind of the biggest obstacles that prevent women getting into the labour force?
Childcare is the largest measurable determinant of female labour force participation. If you have for example, a child under 6, your female likelihood of entering the labour force is going to reduce by 54 to 60%. And is this because people think that a woman should stay at home and look after the child? Or is it because there are no other options? We actually don't know. I have a survey at the moment in the field with Verity Research. We are looking at mapping the care economy, trying to find out what people actually do for childcare, elder care, and care for persons with disability. But apart from the Time Use Survey of 2017, we really don't have much information as to what's keeping them out of the labour force when it comes to care.
Why is it that female unemployment consistently remains sort of double that of men? And what are our hiring practices like?
Jobs are still gendered, Savitri. There's women's jobs and men's jobs for the vast majority of people. And so that works on both the demand side and the supply side. On employers, from the employer's point of view, they're biased about hiring women because, what's the point in training them? They're going to leave and have kids. From the woman's point of view, especially women who are getting more educated, they want something that's in the formal sector. So they won't just take any job. They're waiting for a good job. And so that leads to higher unemployment on their side.
Higher education, for instance, there are always, or most of the time, there are more women than males in the university system. Why do women with A levels and above face unemployment rates, which are sometimes above 100%?
So higher education is really the best bet if you want a good job. It increases your likelihood of getting a government job by 53%. Basically, it's a good way out of inactivity. But it also increases the likelihood of being unemployed by 53%. So it's partly that women get a degree and then they wait for a good job to come along.
So youth unemployment hovering around 20%. How does this intersect with gender, especially for young women wanting to join the labour force?
So youth unemployment is really quite high for women for similar reasons. They're women who are coming out of school. They're waiting for good jobs. And they are, because they don't have any experience and so on, they are not likely to get a job immediately. So for that type of woman, really having sort of good skills, computer skills, those are the things that are going to help them get a job. But because they don't take just any job, they are going to be unemployed.
What's the impact that the pandemic had on women? Did it push them out of full-time work? Also, now given the return to some normalcy, how has it been equitable?
So because of the types of jobs that women are in, especially the export sector, global shocks, global shifts impact them quite a bit. And we've seen, not just the pandemic, but the economic crisis after that, globally, sort of things that happened in 2024, exports shrank, female employment shrank. And in 2025, we've seen a pickup, but that's again because in the first part of 2025, there was a pickup in the global economy. So they are quite susceptible to global changes.
So the services sector is expanding, but agriculture sector is declining. How are women positioned in these shifting sectors?
That's a great question. Women who are staying in school, getting educated, being able to do service sector jobs, it's good for them. Even in agriculture, unskilled workers, unskilled manufacturing workers, they are still a large part of the female labor force participation, but obviously they're women who need to work, and that's why they're working.
So how much of women's economic contribution is actually hidden, informal or unpaid work? And do you think policy needs to account for this?
Informal work we capture. The labor force survey conducted by the DCS captures this very well. In fact, there was a combined ILO World Bank study that they did a survey themselves, and they found that the DCS instrument and the DCS way of asking the questions actually captured it better than their initial questionnaire. So we are capturing informal employment. There is a misperception that we are not, and I really want to clear that we are. But what we're not thinking enough about is the fact that unpaid work is also work. And in 2017, DCS did a time use survey which sort of calculated how much women were engaged in unpaid work. And they actually the average woman spent 4.1 hours a day more than men on unpaid work. So that's cooking, cleaning, childcare, elder care, the whole works. And if you actually calculate how much that works out per year, and then you divide it, the number of hours by a working day, because if you consider it a job, you actually find that it works out to 187 working days per year, which is something like 8.5 months. So you can understand why female labor force participation is low, because women already have a full-time, almost full-time unpaid job.
If women don't do the unpaid work, who is going to do it? And how do we translate that work into actual money?
Ashwin Pereira and I also from Verite, we did a valuation of this. The value of all the unpaid work in the economy, men and women together, came to 14% of GDP. And for women, the amount that women did was 12%, men did 2%. So complete reversal of how men and women contribute to GDP. But the value is similar to that 14% of GDP, which is larger than the contribution of agriculture.
Are there programs anywhere else in the world where women are actually remunerated for the care work they do, or the...
So actually India And I'm not sure whether this is all of India, but this is something they sort of either passed into law or began very recently. I'm a little ambivalent about that, Savitri, because then you're incentivizing women to stay at home more. So it's yes, then it needs to be valued, but whether the way is to give them the money for doing it or whether there's some other way out of it is really a question.
So, if female participation tends to stagnate the way it is, what long-term consequences is Sri Lanka going to see from the point of growth and also social resilience?
I think what we have to take into account is we are an aging population, which means the workforce is also aging. And currently you have what's called the sandwich generation. So older people and kids and women are doing this work. So my survey, though it's still early days, we are finding a much larger number of households than I had expected who are engaged in sandwich care. We've got to think about women the way we think about men, which is not to forget that, the gendered aspect of it, but to essentially think, okay, I want women in my workforce. What's preventing them from being there in my workforce? And how can I either provide it or how can I lobby government to provide it for me? So I think employers have to think that way. And I think childcare infrastructure is actually, it's not a private household matter, it's social infrastructure, just like electricity and roads and bridges. It's infrastructure. And if we don't lay that infrastructure, we are going to be in for a big shock.
Across YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, Kaleidoscope delivers stories that matter. Connect, subscribe, and stay tuned.
You focus on your goals. We will take care of the risks. Silingo Life.